Hey guys, so today we're going to take you on a little wild edible tour. These are some of the things we noticed when we were checking out the property, and even though the house is great, we were pretty much sold on the amount of food that this place is already having in store for us. And a lot of these wild edibles we've just learned over the years through our own searching and researching, and yeah, let's begin the tour.
About wild edibles, they're already there. You don't even have to put shovel to soil to eat. So many of these things we were able to harvest right away upon moving in, and then we're just adding more and more to that by what we grow. So nature's growing for us as the first step. We're just taking over and helping her.
Mulberry season is here. Look at these.
Step one on our wild edible tour today, we have the mighty mulberry. We consider ourselves pretty fortunate actually. At our prior home, I would actually bike all around town finding wild mulberries with an assortment of bags and containers, biking 20 minutes, trying to not smush them and get them home as intact as I can. Luckily, we have this beauty 40 feet away from our house. So we have all the mulberries we can eat. All creatures great and small, they get their share, so quite a bounty. It's actually a native tree too, which is really important, not only for the soil health, but just the general ecology. There's so many animals that have been eating them for millennia, including humans. You make jams, wine out of it. Haven't tried that yet, but really excited to try. So yeah, it's just step one on our tour. We'll visit a few other areas of the property, but this is kind of one of the crowning jewels. Right when we pulled up, we saw this and kind of, all right, sold. Do we need to go in the house? No, sold. Got the mulberry. There's a quick little shot about what it's all about from the human perspective. Almost like a little blackberry. Honestly, you can let them get a little bit riper, but we kind of got a little antsy just because they're so dang good, and it's good to beat the birds to them too. And just a couple little ID features. So yeah, the berry itself is like a blackberry. It's got the little stem attached. And then if you're looking for a mulberry tree, it actually has an interesting trait in the leaves. First off, they're very glossy, but they also have a few different leaf shapes or leaf forms, even on the same tree, same branch. You have this one, it's glossy, serrated, and then you have the lobes on this one. If anyone's familiar with sassafras, you'll know that it often does a similar thing. You have just one consistent oval leaf shape. Sometimes it has one lobe, like the little mitten leaves. Sometimes it has two. So that's an ID feature. And oftentimes on young trees as well, the bark is very yellow. You can often notice it from quite a distance. What a young mulberry looks like. It has a very striking yellow bark. It kind of loses that as the tree ages, but as you get closer, obviously, the berries come into play.
How old do you think this is? Love?
What?
How old do you think this mulberry is?
Tough to say.
Very old. Sorghum. So finding fresh mulberries is actually not the easiest thing to do. And the reason why you will never find it at like a typical supermarket is because their storage life is very short. These little berries, even though they're nice and firm right now, at the end of the day, they would probably be mush. And if you try to store them in the fridge, they lose their flavor almost instantly. Off we go to the walnut tree.
All right, so we took a couple acre walk down to one of my favorites right here. Not saying anything bad about any of the berries, but this is true survival food right here. I'm a bit of a nut myself. We're talking about black walnuts. This beautiful native tree, you can see some of the nuts right here, provides a bounty of protein, fat, and just straight deliciousness. If anyone hasn't had a black walnut and you're just trying to compare it to English walnuts that you find in the store, it's a world apart. Another one of my favorite things about wild edibles, first off, you get just a complex depth of flavor that you'll very rarely get in cultivated fruit. Generally you get better disease and pest resistance. You know, they chose to grow there. They weren't forced to grow there by humans. And third, it's usually a nutritious aspect too. Take black walnuts for example. They have twice the protein count and twice the fat content of English walnuts. And that's to say nothing of twice the flavor, which they also have. So really a nut you can't miss with right here. It's beautiful, it's bountiful, and it's delicious. Find them. So a few ID features of the black walnut. It generally has a very kind of corky appearance on the bark, very deeply ridged and dark. Then if we jump over to the leaves over here, this is actually considered one leaf. And these are just the leaflets that make up each leaf. It has a very distinctive smell too. If you crush it, it's tough to describe. It's got a hint of citronella in there, but definitely not, it doesn't scream citronella. It's a unique smell. And then if you come to the nutlets here, they have a sticky outer shell and they gradually largen. It almost looks like a tennis ball. So if you ever think you've seen tennis balls by the hundreds stuck up in a tree, it's very likely you've come across a black walnut. And part of the reason it has that distinctive smell, black walnuts actually release a chemical known as juglone. It's in the leaves, in the nuts, in the roots. So if you're gardening around black walnut trees, you have to be a little bit careful about what you plant. Luckily, most of the edibles we're talking about today, mulberries, black raspberries, autumn olive, those grow very well around black walnuts. There are a few you want to stay away from. Off the top of my head, the potatoes generally don't like it. Some of the same family too, tomatoes, peppers get a little bit stunted by it. The ones that do well, melons, pumpkins, onions, carrots, beans, those have no problem around black walnuts. Some of the other ones, greens, lettuce, kale, are some more you have to stay away from. So something to keep in mind right there.
This is the autumn olive shrub. I'll let Rory take it away.
Ah yes, the autumn olive. Foresters and agricultural proponents will probably hate me for saying this, but I love this shrub. A lot of people, they consider it invasive. You know, if we neglected this place, no one is here for 20 years, sure, would it spread? Yeah, but let me tell you about the benefits. This is a wonderful shrub for so many reasons. One of them you can't even see right now. This, you might be familiar with beans and peas, how they fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and pump it back into the soil. This is one of the few plants not in that family that does that. So it's a great plant to regenerate abused soils. In addition to providing copious nectar in its flowers, for bees of all kinds, honeybees especially, which we have, and just for the senses too. If you ever have smelled an autumn olive in bloom, I think you would agree with me that it's almost worth growing just for that alone. But those same flowers turn into these little berries. They're gonna ripen up, as the name implies, in autumn. And they turn to a very bright scarlet. Right now, sort of like small and brown, kind of inconspicuous, but the flavor is unparalleled. If you could wrap cran apple into one fruit, that's the best way I can describe this. And it's unbelievable. Raw, baked into, we've done crisps with it, tarts, they freeze incredibly well. I mean, the list just goes on about why this is such a great plant and how stupid humans can be for maligning it so. Luckily, people are coming around quite a bit now that, a lot of permaculture concepts are really taking off and becoming popular. if you have an orchard of any kind, we have apple, pear, peach here, but it doesn't matter what you grow, this will help your soil. Interplanted in between the trees, it tolerates shade pretty well. Like I mentioned earlier, it'll fix nitrogen back into the soil, and that's only going to help your trees. And just the wealth of diversity that it brings, bugs, birds, everything seems to love this shrub, except for pests and diseases. So that's another beauty that I didn't even mention earlier. I've never once seen this bothered by any disease of any kind, any bugs of any kind eating the berries.
So if you think you found an autumn olive bush and you want to sample it, some identification points you can look for is, oh, and I'll throw up some pictures on this too. But the berries are these small pinkish berries with silver flecks all on the surface. Like Rory said, right now they're just these tiny little fruits developing. And then Rory's also got a leaf to show you.
The leaves kind of have some of those same, it might be tough to see in the camera, but it's not just green all over. They have these slightly raised silvery white speckles. Almost kind of feels like sandpaper a little bit, and looks a bit like it too. So that's a key identifier right there.
I should have videoed this when they were flowering, but these are wild blackberries, guys. You can see the little berries starting to form. And these will grow like weeds. It's kind of a mixed jungle right here, but these tall guys right here, these are all new blackberry canes. So blackberries form their canes the first year, they fruit their second year. So all these canes with fruit on it are actually second year canes. I am stoked about these milkweed flowers finding their home here. When we first moved in, we didn't have a lot. We've let this patch kind of take over, and milkweeds are so beneficial. Many people rip them out, but please don't. They are actually the #1 food source for monarch butterfly caterpillars. So they'll actually come lay their eggs on this plant, and then the caterpillars will munch and form into their monarchs later on in life. But please leave these in the garden. They're really cute. They are perennial, so even if it's just leaving a few. And yeah, they smell amazing too, so get in there and sniff them. They smell so pretty.
So we got a perfect little segue here, because under the shade of our friend black walnut and an autumn olive, we have what we consider some of the best of the fruit world right here. Not quite ripe, but we have black raspberries here. I've been eating these literally for as long as I can remember. Some of my earliest memories are colored with this fruit right here. Just like all the others, they're delicious. They're a native plant. They're important to all life around us, not just us. It's a delicious fruit. You likely come across it. It's very common, very easily identifiable, so it's possible you guys have even been eating it too.
These mulberries are actually ripening before our eyes. Every time we walk by it, we're grabbing another little snack. Aren't we, love?